It began with a laugh. Not the kind you share with friends, but the hollow, cruel laughter of men who believe their badge is stronger than a child's dream. The sound echoed down the hallway, bouncing off lockers painted in cheerful colors that suddenly felt like a cruel joke. 12-year-old Malik Johnson froze, holding his painting a swirl of blues and yellows depicting his grandmother's garden when the two officers stepped closer. One ripped the canvas from his hands, the other smirked like it was nothing more than trash. The tearing sound was louder than any siren, shredding not just paper but dignity. His classmates gasped, and Malik's chest tightened as if the air had been stolen too. He wanted to scream, to fight, to demand why, but his voice betrayed him. He stood small, silent, suffocating under the weight of their contempt. Yet inside, something began to burn. What no one saw, not even Malik himself, was that this moment, this humiliation, would ignite a story larger than anyone in that hallway could imagine. The school had invited local officers for a so-called community day. The idea was simple: build trust, bridge gaps, show children that police were their friends. But what unfolded that morning proved how fragile such illusions were. Malik had spent days painting, staying up late while his mother reminded him to sleep. He poured every color he knew into that picture because it wasn't just art. It was memory. His grandmother's roses, golden under the afternoon sun, were the safest place he knew. She used to tell him, "Malik, beauty can survive even the harshest soil." He believed her until those hands in blue uniforms shredded it apart. The officers didn't care. One chuckled, muttering something about graffiti and gang colors. Malik heard the whispers ripple through his classmates. Some of the white kids giggled nervously, not daring to look him in the eye. Others stared at the floor, ashamed or afraid. Only his best friend, Javier, whispered, "Don't cry, bro. Don't give them that." But tears betrayed Malik anyway, hot and unrelenting. The officers left the scraps of his painting scattered across the floor like confetti from a celebration he was never invited to. They walked away, still laughing. Malik knelt, gathering the pieces. His fingers trembled as he tried to fit them back together, but the image would never be whole again. That was the point. He knew it. And for the first time, he understood something his father once said in a voice both tired and fierce. "There are battles you don't choose, son, but they will find you anyway." No one in that hallway knew who Malik's father was. To them, he was just another black kid at a public school, another boy whose dreams could be crushed without consequence. They didn't know his father's name echoed in Washington, in courtrooms, in headlines. They didn't know the man who kissed Malik goodnight was also the Attorney General of the United States, sworn to uphold justice. Malik never flaunted it. His parents raised him to be humble, to let his work and his heart speak louder than his last name. But today, humility was no shield. Today, silence felt like surrender. When Malik walked into class, clutching the torn remains, the room went quiet. His teacher, Mrs. Reynolds, froze mid-sentence. For a moment, she looked ready to speak up, to demand what happened. But then something flickered in her eyes: fear, hesitation, calculation. She pressed her lips into a thin line and turned back to the board. Malik understood. Even adults were afraid to stand against the uniform. The lesson moved on, but Malik's mind didn't. Every word blurred. Every sound became distant. All he saw was yellow paint smeared against the tile floor, crushed under a boot. By lunch, the story had spread across the school. Whispers followed Malik down the hallway. The cops tore his painting. Why him? Maybe he did something. That last one stung the most, because it wasn't just children repeating it. It was the echo of a society always ready to blame him for his own pain. Malik ate in silence, his tray untouched, his eyes fixed on the clock. He counted the seconds until the bell, not to escape school, but to escape the weight pressing against his chest. When the final bell rang, Malik didn't rush home like usual. Instead, he lingered by the lockers, tracing the edges of his torn painting tucked into his backpack. Javier joined him, eyes blazing with anger. "You can't let this slide, man. They can't just do that." Malik wanted to agree, wanted to shout yes, but the words tangled with fear. What could a boy do against men with badges? What could his voice do against their laughter? He shook his head, muttering, "It doesn't matter." Javier grabbed his shoulder. "It matters. It matters because they think it doesn't." That night, Malik sat at the kitchen table, The torn painting spread out like evidence. His mother noticed his silence, but didn't press. She touched his hair gently, the way she always did when words failed. Later, when his father came home, exhausted from meetings in the capital, Malik hesitated. Should he tell him? Could he? His father carried the weight of a nation. Why burden him with the cruelty of two officers in a school hallway? But as he looked at the scraps of his art, Malik felt that burning inside again. This wasn't just about a painting. It was about dignity, about being seen. When he finally told his father, the words tumbled out messy and raw. His father listened without interruption, his expression unreadable, his jaw tightening only once when Malik described the laughter. When the story ended, silence filled the room, thick and heavy. Then his father leaned forward, eyes steady and voice calm, but edged with fire. They thought they were tearing paper. What they tore was something far greater, and they will answer for it. Malik's stomach fluttered. He wasn't sure what his father meant, but he felt something shift in the air, something inevitable. Malik barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, the sound came back, the rip of canvas, the laughter that followed. He would jolt awake, fists clenched, heart pounding. At dawn, he dragged himself out of bed and found his father already in the kitchen, sipping coffee, the morning paper spread across the table. For once, the headlines didn't matter. Malik's father, still in his suit from the night before, was waiting for him. Son, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him, sit down. Malik obeyed, nervous. His father rarely looked this serious at home. He reserved that expression for the cameras, the press, the hearings. Now it was fixed on him. I need you to understand something, his father began, voice low but commanding. What happened to you yesterday wasn't about a painting. It was about power, and people who believe you don't deserve it. Malik shifted uncomfortably, staring at his hands. But it was just a picture. They probably thought, no. His father interrupted firmly. Don't excuse them. Don't shrink yourself to make their cruelty smaller. They knew what they were doing. He leaned closer, his eyes heavy with both anger and love. And so do you. You felt it. Malik swallowed hard. He did feel it, though he wished he didn't. The humiliation still clung to him like smoke. What happens now? He asked, his voice small. His father's answer came slow, deliberate. What happens now is that we don't stay silent. Silence is what they count on. But I won't use my title, not yet. This has to begin with you. Malik blinked. Me? Yes, you. Because this is your story. And if it starts with me, they'll say it's politics. But if it starts with you, it's truth. Raw, undeniable truth. Malik's chest tightened. The idea of standing up terrified him. He was 12. He was just a boy. Yet the weight of his father's gaze told him he was more than that. That day at school, Malik carried the torn painting with him, the pieces folded neatly in his backpack. He could feel the eyes on him again, curious, mocking, pitying. By lunchtime, Javier nudged him. You gonna say something? Malik hesitated. He wanted to shrink into the background, to disappear. But then he remembered his father's words. Silence is what they count on. Slowly, he stood up on the cafeteria bench, heart racing so hard he thought it might burst. The room quieted, dozens of eyes turning toward him. My name is Malik Johnson, he began, his voice shaky at first. Yesterday, during Community Day, 2 officers ripped up my painting. They laughed about it. They said it was trash. But it wasn't trash. It was my grandmother's garden, and it meant everything to me. And they destroyed it because I'm black. Gasps rippled across the room. Malik's voice grew stronger. I'm 12 years old. I'm not a criminal. I'm not dangerous. I'm a kid. And they treated me like I didn't matter. But I do matter. We all do. When he sat down, silence hung heavy. Then Javier clapped. Slowly, others joined. Not everyone, but enough. Malik's heart pounded not with fear, but with something new. Power. Word spread quickly. By the next day, the story was out of the cafeteria and into the hallways. Teachers whispered. Parents began to call. And then, local reporters showed up at the school gates. Malik hadn't realized how fast a spark could become a fire. The police department tried to smother it. A spokesperson dismissed the incident, saying the officers had mistaken the painting for gang-related imagery. The statement stung Malik worse than the original act. They weren't just denying, they were rewriting the truth. His father watched it all carefully, letting the storm brew. They're digging their own grave, he told Malik one evening as the TV blared another segment. But this is where it gets harder. They will try to break you. They will twist your words. They will make you doubt what you lived. That's what injustice does. Sure enough, the backlash came. Online commenters sneered that Malik was overreacting. Some parents at school complained that the boy was bringing politics into education. A few even suggested he made it up. Malik felt the ground shift under him. At night, he scrolled through the comments until his chest hurt, his throat tight with unshed tears. One evening, he confronted his father. "Why me? Why do I have to fight this? I didn't ask for any of it." His father looked at him with tired eyes. "I know, son. You didn't ask. But history doesn't wait for permission. It chooses moments. And it chose you. The question is, will you let them define you, or will you define yourself?" Malik wanted to scream that he was just a boy, not some symbol. But deep down, he knew his father was right. That burning inside him hadn't gone away. It was growing. A week later, the school hosted a town hall to address the incident. The auditorium overflowed with parents, teachers, students, reporters, and uniformed officers lined up at the back. Malik sat in the front row, his stomach in knots, the torn painting in his lap like a wound that refused to close. His father sat beside him, silent but steady, a pillar of strength. The principal opened with empty platitudes about misunderstandings and healing together. Then the microphone was offered to Malik. His legs felt like stone as he walked up, but the moment his hands touched the mic, he remembered the cafeteria. He remembered the silence that had followed his words, the power of truth. "I don't want to hear about misunderstandings," Malik said, his voice carrying through the room. "I was there. I know what happened. Those officers laughed when they tore my painting. They laughed because they thought I was too small to matter. But I do matter, and I won't let anyone tell me otherwise." The crowd shifted. Some clapped. Some murmured. The officers at the back stared, unflinching. Malik took a breath and held up the painting scraps. "This is what they left me with. But I'm still here. And I'll paint again. Because no matter how many times they tear it apart, I won't stop creating. I won't stop being me." The applause this time was louder, sharper, more defiant. Malik's hands trembled as he stepped down, but his heart soared. He had spoken his truth, and the world had heard it. But the story didn't end there. A journalist recognized Malik's last name. She did some digging. And within days, the headline broke. "Boy humiliated by police at school is son of U.S. Attorney General." The revelation exploded like a bomb. Overnight, the story went national. News anchors debated it on primetime. Politicians issued statements. The police department scrambled, suddenly aware that the child they dismissed was not only a symbol of injustice, but also the son of the nation's top law enforcement official. Malik watched it unfold with mixed emotions. On one hand, the attention meant justice was closer than ever. On the other, he feared people would dismiss his pain as a political weapon. He didn't want to be a pawn. He wanted to be heard as himself. His father noticed his unease. One evening, as camera crews camped outside their home, he sat with Malik on the porch. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in gold. "Listen, son," he said softly. "This was always your story, not mine. The world may try to make it about me, about politics, about power. But don't forget it started with you, a boy and his painting. And it ends with the truth you've already spoken. No one can take that from you." Malik nodded, tears prickling his eyes. For the first time since that hallway, he felt the weight lift, just a little. The battle was far from over, but he was no longer alone. He never had been. And deep down, Malik knew this was only the beginning. The headlines didn't just travel across the country, they exploded around the world. In living rooms thousands of miles away, people watched a boy stand against the weight of a system that had tried to crush him. Malik saw his face on every screen, replayed in clips and news specials. His words from the town hall, "I do matter," were repeated in hashtags, on posters, in chants at protests. But alongside the support came the venom. Commentators sneered. Of course the Attorney General's kid got media coverage. Any other boy, and we wouldn't even be talking about this. Online trolls flooded his social media with slurs, questioning his story, twisting his truth into lies. Malik read them late at night, curled under his blanket, his chest heavy with doubt. Was this what speaking up meant? Was justice worth feeling like the whole world was watching and waiting for him to break? His father noticed the exhaustion in his son's eyes. "You have to protect your spirit, Malik," he said gently one evening as they walked through the neighborhood. "The world will try to take it from you. Don't let them. You fight by living too. But Malik couldn't ignore the storm brewing at school. Some kids avoided him, afraid of the spotlight. Others whispered that he was only brave because of who his dad was. Teachers seemed nervous, careful with their words, as though every sentence might become tomorrow's headline. Malik hated it. He didn't want to be feared. He wanted to be seen. One morning, as he walked into the building, the two officers who had torn his painting stood near the entrance. Their uniforms gleamed under the sunlight, their faces tight with arrogance. Malik froze. For a moment, the hallway blurred, the sound of laughter from that day echoing in his ears. But then something unexpected happened. A group of students stepped forward Javier at the front, forming a small wall between Malik and the officers. Javier's voice was firm. Not today. The officers exchanged looks, smirks tugging at their mouths, but they said nothing. They turned and left. Malik felt his chest swell. For the first time, it wasn't just him standing alone. His truth had created ripples, and those ripples were growing into waves. Still, the battle was far from over. The police union released a statement defending the officers, claiming they acted reasonably and that the boys' behavior had been misinterpreted. Malik nearly dropped the newspaper when he read it. His mother's hands shook with fury as she slammed the article onto the table. They're still trying to paint you as the problem. His father, though visibly angry, kept his composure. They're desperate. They're scrambling to protect themselves. Then he looked at Malik with quiet intensity. But this isn't just about them anymore. It's about every child who's ever been told they don't matter. You've become more than a story, son. You've become a symbol. That's a heavy weight, I know. But you're not carrying it alone. Days later, the family was summoned to a congressional hearing. The nation wanted answers. Cameras flashed as Malik and his parents entered the grand building, the marble floors echoing with footsteps, the air heavy with history. Malik clutched his father's hand tightly, trying to steady himself. He'd never seen so many microphones, so many faces waiting to dissect every word. Inside the chamber, senators sat in neat rows, some leaning forward with sympathy, others with skepticism. Malik's father gave his testimony first, calm, measured, authoritative. He spoke about systemic injustice, about the duty of law enforcement, about accountability. But it was Malik everyone was waiting to hear. When his name was called, Malik walked to the microphone. His legs trembled, but his voice carried. I didn't come here to talk about politics. I came here to talk about what it feels like to be 12 years old and treated like you don't belong. I came here to tell you what it's like when people with power laugh while they destroy something you love. They didn't just tear my painting. They tried to tear me down. But I'm still here, and I won't stop telling the truth. The room was silent when he finished. Not the silence of indifference, but the silence of weight, the kind that comes when words strike deeper than expected. Cameras clicked. Some senators wiped their eyes. Others scribbled furiously on notepads. Outside, the response was immediate. Crowds gathered with signs bearing Malik's words. I do matter became a rallying cry. Protesters filled streets in cities across the nation, demanding accountability for the officers, demanding reform. Malik watched footage of strangers chanting his words and felt a strange mixture of pride and fear. He hadn't asked to be the voice of anything larger than himself. But now that he was, he couldn't turn back. Yet the pushback grew darker. Threats began arriving, anonymous letters slipped into their mailbox, hateful messages left on their answering machine. One night, a rock shattered their front window. Malik woke to his mother's scream and his father rushing downstairs. The fear was real now, not just online or in whispers. Malik realized the cost of truth wasn't just attention. It was danger. His father gathered the family in the living room that night. They want to scare us into silence, he said firmly. But fear is their weapon, not ours. We will not bow to it. We will not let them define us by their hate. Malik tried to be brave, but his hands shook. He whispered, "What if they come after me at school? What if they hurt my friends?" His father knelt in front of him, placing steady hands on his shoulders. "You are not alone, Malik. Look at what's happening. Look at the people standing with you. You've already changed something. That doesn't mean it won't be hard. It will. But every step you take is proof that they didn't break you." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Legal investigations opened into the officers' conduct. News specials dissected every angle of Malik's story. Civil rights leaders reached out, praising his courage. Musicians and artists dedicated works to him. A mural appeared on a city wall, a portrait of Malik holding a brush, golden light radiating behind him. The first time he saw it, Malik stood frozen, his heart pounding. He never thought his face would become a symbol of hope. But with recognition came more tests. At school, some kids accused him of wanting attention. Others claimed he was lucky to have a powerful father. Malik wrestled with it, wondering if they were right. But then Javier reminded him, "Bro, if it was just about your dad, this story would have died already. People listened because of what you said. Don't forget that." Malik nodded, holding on to that truth. One evening, after a long day of interviews and meetings, Malik sat at the dining table with a blank sheet of paper and his paints. His hands hovered over the brushes. For the first time since the incident, he was ready to create again. Slowly, carefully, he began to paint. Not his grandmother's garden this time, but something new. A boy standing in a hallway bathed in golden light, holding the torn pieces of a painting, his face lifted not in defeat but in defiance. Around him were shadows of officers, dark and imposing, but the boy glowed brighter, unbroken. Malik didn't know what final justice would look like, but he knew this much. They had tried to silence him, and instead, they had given him a voice stronger than he ever imagined. The hearings stretched into months. Malik's story had sparked more than headlines. It had opened a door that could no longer be shut. Across the country, parents told their children about him. Teachers discussed his courage in classrooms. Churches and community centers prayed for him. Yet with all the light came darkness, the relentless attempts to twist, to smear, to drown his voice in noise. But Malik never wavered. He kept painting. He kept speaking when asked. He kept showing up at school, walking past the whispers, past the stares. Each step became an act of defiance, a quiet reminder, "You didn't break me." The investigation revealed damning truths. The officers who tore his painting had histories of complaints, buried reports of excessive force, patterns ignored by their superiors. The press dug deeper, uncovering systemic failures. Malik read the articles with a mix of shock and grim validation. His pain had not been an isolated moment. It was part of something bigger, something that demanded change. Finally, the day came when the Justice Department announced formal charges: abuse of authority, misconduct, violations of civil rights. Malik sat beside his father as the announcement aired on national television. For a long moment, he couldn't breathe. They had done it. The officers who laughed as they tore his art were no longer untouchable. But justice was not as simple as punishment. Malik learned that quickly. Some celebrated, calling it a victory. Others raged, accusing his father of favoritism, of political theater. Malik felt the weight of those accusations press against him, sharp and unyielding. He feared people would never see him for who he was, just a boy who loved to paint, but only as a symbol, a name attached to headlines. One night, unable to sleep, Malik wandered to the porch. The moon bathed the street in silver, the air thick with summer heat. He thought about the torn painting, about the laughter, about the faces of classmates who didn't know whether to look at him or away. He whispered into the night, "Why me?" His father appeared in the doorway, silent at first, then stepping out to sit beside him. "That question has no easy answer," he admitted. "But maybe it isn't about why it happened to you. Maybe it's about what you chose to do with it." Malik stared at the ground. "I didn't choose this." "No," his father said gently, "but you chose not to stay silent. You chose to paint again. You chose to stand when it would have been easier to hide. That choice, that's yours. And that's powerful." The words lingered, wrapping around Malik like armor. The trial drew near. Media trucks parked outside the courthouse, their antennas piercing the sky. Crowds gathered, divided between those demanding justice and those defending the officers. Malik watched it all from inside, his small figure hidden beneath the shadow of towering adults. He felt the chaos pressing against the glass, threatening to consume him. When he was called to testify, Malik's heart thundered so loud he could hear it in his ears. The courtroom loomed, heavy with tension. The officers sat across from him, their expressions unreadable. Malik forced himself to meet their eyes. For a moment, he was back in that hallway, small and powerless. But then he remembered the cafeteria, the town hall, the chants in the streets, the mural painted in his honor. He remembered every time someone told him, "You gave us courage." So he spoke. He told the court about the hallway, the laughter, the way his painting felt like a piece of his heart. He spoke about what it meant to have it torn apart, not because of what was on the canvas, but because of who held it. He spoke about being 12, about wanting nothing more than to belong, and being reminded that to some people, he never would. His voice trembled, but it did not break. When he finished, the silence was profound. Even the officers shifted uncomfortably. Malik stepped down from the witness stand with his chest heavy, but his spirit unbowed. The trial lasted weeks. Witnesses came forward, evidence mounted, arguments clashed. At last, the verdict arrived, guilty. The officers were convicted of misconduct and abuse of power, stripped of their badges, facing sentences that echoed across the nation. The courthouse erupted cheers outside, anger from others, but Malik sat quietly, absorbing it all. Justice had spoken, but something inside him knew this was not the end. That night, Malik returned to his paints. He began a new piece, not of pain, not of anger, but of light. He painted children of every color playing together under a golden sky, their laughter rising like music. In the center, a boy stood holding a brush, surrounded not by shadows but by open hands. Hope bloomed across the canvas, brighter than any wound. When his parents saw it, his mother whispered, "This is the future." His father nodded, his voice thick. "And you're part of building it." Months later, the school held an art exhibition. Malik's new painting hung in the center, framed in gold, lit by a warm spotlight. Parents, teachers, and students gathered, gazing at it in awe. Some wiped away tears. Others smiled quietly. Malik stood in the crowd, no longer hidden, no longer silent. For once, he felt seen not as a headline, not as the Attorney General's son, but as himself. As the night drew to a close, Javier clapped him on the back. "Told you, bro. They couldn't break you." Malik smiled, the weight on his shoulders lighter than it had been in months. He thought of his grandmother's garden, of the roses blooming stubbornly in the harshest soil. He realized he was one of those roses. They had tried to trample him, but he had grown anyway. And in that moment, Malik understood the lesson he would carry for the rest of his life. Injustice can tear, can wound, can scar, but it cannot erase. The truth survives. The spirit endures. And sometimes, from the ruins of a torn painting, a brighter masterpiece is born. The golden light above him seemed to glow brighter, wrapping him in warmth. Malik lifted his face toward it, unafraid. He was no longer just a boy in a hallway. He was a voice, a flame, a promise. And his story, though born of pain, had become a beacon of hope. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.